Thanks for having me here today. I only have 2 slides. I didn't realize I could break the rules and have more than 2 slides. But so I'm going to talk about our InFEWS project, which is called InterACTWEL. It stands for Interactive Adaptation and Collaboration Tool for Managing Water, Energy, and Land. And this was a development of a decision support tool for the Umatilla Basin in Oregon. If you're not familiar with Oregon, the Umatilla Basin is on the east side of the state. So unlike where Oregon State is, it is very dry, different climate regime there. It is also some of our big agricultural production areas in terms of winter wheat, corn, potatoes. There's some confined animal operation organizations there, and also we new crop that is in that area, data centers. Amazon is one of the major landowners there now because of access to cheap hydropower and water for data cooling centers. And so this project was to try to bring together different stakeholders to understand adaptations for these systems and where that nexus was, particularly under stress conditions that we're seeing, particularly around drought and also water quality. There's a nitrate issue that's been in the area for 30 plus years in the shallow aquifer. And so understanding some of those issues. And how we did this was primarily engaging these different stakeholders through a bunch of different future scenarios and discussions to co-produce what we call the FEW systems diagram. I call it, as a social scientist, a conceptual model of understanding these linkages between these different stakeholder groups and subgroups, and understanding those feedbacks and connections, which provided the backbone for the decision support tool with that data collection size there. I think the website is on there. You can I think we're just finishing the finishing touches on it. You can log in and start fiddling around with the tool if you so desire. So this goes forward. So the slides here, this is an example of how we did these scenarios. We used kind of a future headlines approach of, we had a variety of these that we worked with some of our key stakeholders or partners to help us formulate these different kind of scenarios of what's feasible, what might happen in the future, and then put them in kind of these beaver times. We're the beaver state. Oregon State is the beaver school. So, beaver times, so we kind of made it a little bit fictionalized. And we did that for a reason because we had a lot of dynamics with these stakeholders. Water is probably Sean knows, being in the West, water is very limited. Conversations around water can be very contentious. And so we try to kind of give a little bit distance so people could talk a little bit more freely about, kind of some of their goals, some constraints around water. We also were really cognizant about who we had in the room, the stakeholders of who we mixed and who we didn't, especially at the first, especially policymakers and also senior and junior water rights and their goals and objectives and the way that they saw the issue were very different. We also had the tribes involved as one of the key. They had the most senior water right in the area, so they were heavily involved in this process too. So some of the things that we learned through many meetings and working with these stakeholders and putting these together, the first one was don't talk about the nexus, kind of like Fight Club. Don't talk. It was a term that is very academic, but understood. Once we started to tease in about connections and relationships and feedbacks, and everyone understood the nexus. It just wasn't something. They're in it. So we really try to move away from kind of all sorts of academic terms and thinking about just connections and how they saw what they were doing, how that might impact other users at different scales across the time. Another big thing that I think we already kind of touched on was the context of the region and the dynamics between our stakeholders, and being very cognizant of what has happened in the past and what's going on in the future. We walked into a situation where, for example, the nitrate issue has been around for like 30 years. And, some of our stakeholders thought we were going to solve this issue that has been very, very intractable for a long time. And so, setting kind of boundaries of what we could provide and what we couldn't was really important, and understanding some of the history between different stakeholders, producers, food producers, big ag, small ag, municipalities. That was really important to kind of get a grounding of who was involved, how are they involved, how are they connected. It's a smaller community, so that everyone's connected to everyone, but trying to understand and manage those connections was key. And so this really is bringing into this, putting in the time. At both, at first, we kind of, this project, like a lot of these Infuse projects, got caught in the COVID wave, where we had a lot of early in-person meetings, which was fantastic, because I don't think we would have been as successful as we were if we weren't able to establish a lot of that in-person meeting. It's about an 8-hour drive from Corvallis to Umatilla Basin. So, we would go out and do these trips and stay for a week or something, and really, try to understand, talk to as many people as we could, and then transfer that to Zoom conversations as well. And part of putting that time in, because these were really complex issues, we were trying to understand these feedback mechanisms, especially as we started moving forward, is to have a whole team involved. So from the hydrologist, the engineer, the computer scientist, because there were questions that would be brought up that I had no idea how to answer. But and it also provided our team a lot of cohesiveness and understanding. I started to understand more of the engineering side, understanding the engineers, understanding how to ask questions, how to approach social scientists, which was great because, as we all are very busy, sometimes I wouldn't be able to make it to a meeting, or they wouldn't, and we'd be able to start speaking each other's language and providing that kind of cohesiveness for the project as we moved forward and talked to these stakeholders. And so that was really important to nudge and show that the whole team really needed to be at these meetings, even if they're like, oh, I don't talk to people. Well, come and sit and take notes and be involved. And you might need to be called upon to talk about some of these technical issues there. And also, I think, especially some of our stakeholders, especially the state agencies, were very, very well versed in the technical aspects and had very specific questions. So it was always good to have a variety of folks in different meetings. And then part of that too, just very clear, is allocating enough resources over the arc of the project to do this work, in terms of not just the funding, but staff and students, to continue to make sure you're reaching out to the stakeholders and keep them abreast of what's going on and checking in with them. We really tried to make this not a one and done kind of deal, but to be involved. And as part of that, giving back. So like some of these pictures, we would be invited into, there were a couple of different technical panels out there looking at different issues like the nitrate issue and things like that. We would be invited in to kind of give an update to their meetings and use that time to show what we've done and also get some feedback real quick. So we had kind of a range of really more formalized data collection and understanding what's going on, and then a lot of these kind of more informal, hey, we're just here to give you an update and get a quick response back, and kind of using a lot of those different approaches over time. And then the last one, and these are all things I think all of us know, but under promise and over deliver to your stakeholders is really important. And making sure the message of your team, knows that before you go in. And that was really true with us with the nitrate issue of, kind of where our bounds of expertise were more around water quantity than quality, and talking about what we could do, and then also saying, well, but we know other folks at the university or the state that might be able to help you with some of these other aspects. And so that was really important to kind of set those boundaries of what was, this tool wasn't going to solve all their problems. We were hoping that it would provide some range and some good things, but making that clear from the get-go that we want to be invested and have them involved in the process and make this a two-way street, but it's also it's within limits of our own expertise there. Yeah, and so I think that's about all I have. Try to keep it the time limit, but I'm happy to elaborate on any of those points.